Thank you, everyone who's joined so far. We'll give people a couple of minutes more to join and then get started. Welcome, everyone who's joining us today for Working at the Intersection of Tech and Entertainment, Spotlight on Archana Kumar. Before we begin, I just want to do a land acknowledgement that we the NYU Los Angeles site sits on land that was Chumash, Tongva, and his land. I just want to acknowledge that before we begin. And then it is my real pleasure to introduce Archana Kumar. Archana has a BA from the University of Melbourne and a Master's of Professional Studies in Interactive Communication from Tisch. And she's also one of my new favorite people. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Nina Sadowski, Program Director of NYU Los Angeles. And I'm very excited for this conversation today. So welcome, Archana.
Thank you so much, Nina. I'm very excited and happy to be here.
So I wanted to start, I've told you this in our prep sessions for this, that I don't understand about 3/4 of what you do. So I'm just going to lay it out there. So I'm going to start out by asking, so your title is currently Senior Software Engineer at Netflix. So what does that impressive job title mean in terms of the day-to-day of what you do? Because I have no idea. So can you fill us in?
I'm very flattered that you use the word impressive, because I probably would argue it's not all that impressive. But there are a lot of misconceptions about what software engineers do, where sometimes, there's this image that we spend all 8 hours in front of a computer looking at a screen with black and a lot of green text, and we just type furiously. But a lot of my day-to-day is actually meeting with people, talking to them, working with designers, product managers, users, and a lot of different people to sort of gather an understanding of what the problem is, what are some areas that we could probably improve, and discuss how before I get to any of that green text coding stuff. And specifically in the area of engineering, I am a UI engineer. So what I do is I work very closely with designers to build user interfaces and experiences, which is powered by data that backend engineers are the ones who kind of hold and improve.
So your work is user facing, right?
Mm-hmm, that's right.
So your work faces towards a Netflix consumer or customer, like me, right? So can you give me an example of something that I would find when I turn on Netflix that you worked on?
So when you log into Netflix and you are a user, you see a big screen where one title these days is promoted, and it's like, this is the main thing you want to watch, right? And then there are like a couple buttons on there, and there's a trailer that plays if you so choose to have auto-playing trailers. So all of that is called interface work, because the backend that's powering it is like a video that needs to play when you hit the play button. But to show you a screen which has like icons and menu buttons on the left, and then you can kind of hit the down arrow on your remote control, and then you get another row of titles, and you keep scrolling, all of that is considered the interface.
So all those things that make our experience of finding what we want, how to choose. And with that, would you say that the back-end engineering, is that the sort of thing, is that where they're making recommendations for us based on our algorithms?
That's one part of it. So the algorithms are our own team, and they focus on that. but there's also the streams themselves, right? So like in this case, what you're watching is converting, digital data, ones and zeros, to like a video on screen. So things like buffering, things where you want to know, like, is the video ready? Which video should we play? What can your TV handle?
Right.
Do you need to see a recap maybe? Things like that. So the video itself becomes the management of a backend engineering team.
Mhm.
And then the UI team are doing all the sort of like ways of presenting it. So I would say I work on building presentation layers that users interact with.
Cool. All right, I'm going to take a step back and chart your career trajectory. So you graduated from the University of Melbourne in a BA in Arts, Media, and Communications, and then you had some time, and then you went back to school to Tisch to get the MPS program. And so I wondered what prompted that decision. What made you go back to school, and why did you choose that program?
I will say that like there are a couple things that go into it. Like I've always been a big entertainment media person. Like growing up, I would say a large portion of my childhood has been influenced by film and TV and video games and all forms of media entertainment. So when I was at the University of Melbourne, the sort of courses that drew me were things that were very specific to understanding media better. So like game studies, network communication. And I know when people hear the term game studies, they think I learn about game theory, but it's actually more like we played video games and we talked about it. And network communication was like, let's talk about all the ways in which networks have changed how media has, changed over the years. So during that time, my side hustle, which was like half part-time job, half side gig, was being a web designer, which was just something that I kind of self-taught. And so from there, I was at this fork in the road with my life where I'm like, on one hand, I really like these courses that are about understanding media, so I could be an academic. And then on the other hand, I'm like, I really like building things and making things, so I could do that. So what happened was I applied to both worlds. I applied to Goldsmiths in London for a master's program, which was what I was going to do about like media and communication and go down the path of academia. And then I also applied to IDP. What happened was because terms start at different times of the year. So in Australia, they start in January and they end in December. So that's the academic calendar. And in London, they were going to start, I think, in about April or May. So when I had applied, I heard back first from Goldsmiths. So I did go to London and I was like, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to be. I'm going to be an academic. And then I found out I got into IDP. And I was like,
turned around and left London and packed up and left. I love that story.
I really reflected on what I want in life. And I was like, I'm a person who learns by doing. What I really, really enjoy is making things and learning from the process of making things and having people use the things I make. And I spoke to a few people and everybody kind of like heard what my thought process was and guided me really well to say, maybe you should do this thing that you feel like would be a really different way of learning than sort of the traditional, read essays, write essays, get published in academia. So that's when
what I love about that story is that you actually went to London ready to begin one thing. I mean, I think that's actually kind of inspiring for everyone who thinks, oh my God, I've set on a path and now I may be stuck in that path. I mean, I think it's very freeing to say, oh, I can transport myself halfway around the world and then still decide, whoops, no, right, gonna do something else. That's kind of great.
I think it's a combination of things. Like I think university systems support this too, which I'm very appreciative of, that sometimes you might start something and then realize it's not for you. I think the person who was gonna be my advisor at that time, she was like wonderfully supportive of it. And my parents, like all these factors worked to really supporting me making this shift. And it's crazy how much my life has changed since.
I want to go on to the next question, but before we do, I just want to mention to the people who are listening that if you have questions, drop them in the chat. We will have time for a Q&A at the end, but if you get sparked by anything along the way, please drop them in and I will field them to Archa. So I want to talk to, all right, so you graduated, you made this huge decision and you turned around from London, you went to New York and finished the program. And then what happened next? What was your first job out of the graduate school?
So at first I was very confused because one of the great things about the program was that it introduced me to a lot of different things. And I was like a kid in a candy store. I wanted a little bit of everything. So it was hard to like know what to do. And at that time, I had just finished a course in my final semester that was about one particular computer language, which I was like, oh, this is fun because it's called Node.js, it's JavaScript, but it's a certain way that you can do both backend and front end. And I was like, I really enjoyed this course. So maybe I'll try and explore this more. And a friend of mine who was working at Guild, which was an e-commerce website that does online flash sales for high-end fashion goods and products, as well as sort of curated experiences in cities, like, something like Groupon, but not so many choices, fewer. So it was like, the best way to learn how to do an interview is to just go to an interview, which at that time I was like, oh yeah, that's sound advice. And that interview, I remember it so well. I thought I did so poorly. I remember calling my husband and being like, oh, that was terrible. I'm so humiliated. I can't imagine ever going back or meeting Elise again because I'm just going to look so dumb. But no, they took a chance on me and they gave me the title of software engineer. They were like, come on in and learn on the job. And honestly, I owe so much of what I do today to companies who just sort of give you that job being like, you can learn on the job. You don't need to get a degree in engineering. There are a lot of things that the workplace teaches you.
Well, I love that story too, for a number of reasons. One, that you thought you tanked an interview and obviously you didn't, which I think is a good object lesson for people looking for jobs. We're so hard on ourselves, right? And the other idea, that, and I believe this because I know you, that you just charmed your way into a job. And, and I get that. And I think that, I believe in the cult of personality, who you are and what you bring to, how you show up is a big part of that kind of thing. And, I don't know that would have taken a, chance on everyone, but I'm glad they took one on you.
I will say, like, the industry in that way is a lot more open to not being restricted to like, do you have this degree? So I always encourage people, and I'm always like, you know what, if you want to do it, explore it. And you might
think that's true. Do you think that the software or this area generally is putting less emphasis on degrees and more just on abilities?
Absolutely. I would say some of the best software engineers I've worked with, especially on the user interface side, have been literature grads, music grads, people who I think it's about thinking and problem solving. And even our interviews and things like that are less about, can you write code that does this? There's a little bit of it, but those are the things I think anyone can, if you really want to do it, you can just learn it. There are a lot of resources.
What you bring from a broader education, though, I guess, is the critical thinking, the comparative analysis, those skills. Yeah, which
working with people, because like I said, a lot of my job involves working with people.
Which is shocking because I think of you just being behind a computer. So see, I'm learning already. Okay, so I want to ask you, I saw that on one of your things on your resume was that you were a creative technologist, and I love that job title. And so I was curious about, what did that mean in that capacity? What does a creative technologist do, and what did you do?
So the term creative technologist can be different in different places. So I'll speak to it as it applied to me at Edelman, which is a PR firm in New York. So in the case of Edelman, they had an experienced design team. So we think of like, there's advertising, there's marketing, there's PR, and then there's like this sort of gray area where a lot of brands and companies want users to have a certain identity or image of them that isn't so flat, for lack of a better word, of like, oh, I saw an ad that said this brand is supposed to be this image or this video. So I'm sure a lot of us have experienced experiences that were manufactured in some ways. Or,
Technologists.
yeah,
Because we
by
didn't know the people who are actually making the experience for us.
and it's really about moments of joy, to create moments of joy for customers or potential customers, so you have that sort of positive association with the brand. So at Edelman, what I did was, as part of the experience design team, I would work with art directors, designers, listen to sort of like what companies and brands needed or were looking for. And then we would try and figure out what's an experience that's sometimes a game that could involve multiple people or one person at a time. Maybe it's something that feels a little like a toy, but that still kind of sparks joy, right? So the best description I can think of is like executing on executions and experiences, because it's such a vague thing, that mostly were things that bring joy and that makes people feel like they're playing.
Mm-hmm. Fun. That sounds like a fun job and a fun thing to experience, both those things. Okay, so just prior to joining Netflix, you were a software engineer at Capital One, which obviously is a credit card institution, right? So you went from, what did you call it the other day? Fintech, right? Fintech. I'm getting cool with the lingo.
Yeah.
You went from fintech to entertainment tech, and I was curious a little bit about that transition. And I was also curious if you always had a desire to be in entertainment, or if you sort of just found yourself there.
I'll answer backwards, and that I always want to be in entertainment. It is definitely the thing that I was like, this is where I want to be. So definitely always was trying to make my way towards entertainment. But my time at Capital One, or in the space of fintech, really showed me what it's like to be in a world where both chaos and regulation exist at the same time.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So on one hand, when you think about money, it is very chaotic in that there are so many transactions happening every single second. The value of money as it pertains to, say, a customer at a store is very different to how it pertains to a vendor. Somebody's spending their money, somebody is gaining their money, and all of these things are all happening at once. There's debit, there's credit, and even under the hood, there is so much technological complexity that anybody who's worked in fintech will tell you, it shocks and scares you. And the other part of it is regulation, because money is so old and has been around pretty much since civilization, and how much it matters to like the functioning of a society, and governments heavily regulate it, like what you can and can't do. So in this world of chaos in which money operates, there is a lot of regulation that you kind of have to navigate between. And the implications of money are so vast. So it really led me to understand this space of what it's like to build a product or build something that a big group of people need. A big group of people are like, I will tell you how that should move around. And then there's a big group of people that are like, I want this. So it's a different space in some respects, but in other respects, it's an all-encompassing space. So I really feel like my knowledge of how money works in America definitely
it has to be valuable, right? An understanding of how money works in America. That has to serve you in your personal life, if nowhere else, right?
Well, you know what? It always shocks people when I tell them that, like, even inside the company, in any fintech company, any of these banks, some of the underlying systems that run all of it are so old, but we can't change them because of how regulation works.
Oh, interesting.
Right. There are a lot of people out there, lobbying for change in these areas. So learn a lot.
That's very interesting. So, all right. So I'm going to segue again. I'm going to ask you. So you always wanted entertainment, and now you find yourself sitting right at the juncture. I mean, Netflix, one of the most powerful players in the industry, right? So you're sitting at the juncture of entertainment and tech. And so where do you think is the most opportunity for people who are looking to get in to be where you are? I mean, where do you think the points of entry are for students or young graduates who are looking to enter at that intersection?
So I definitely mean this in all earnest. There are so many, 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 many opportunities.
Really? That's exciting to hear.
I would, my best way of categorizing it, I'll break them down by production, distribution, and consumption.
Okay.
And even if you, let's start with production, and then I feel it's a fairly reasonable categorization to say there's live action entertainment, there's animation, and then there's gaming and experiences. And if you look at even just live action, film and TV has gone through massive, massive shifts in the last few years. The scale at which content is being produced is unbelievable. And the way the practices of film and TV largely was the same, somewhere between, you know, like early 1900s and about like 60s, 70s. But, you know, VFX and a lot of different new categories have come up. And there's so much technological input to try and make movies and TV more efficient, but something that you can produce all the time because there's so much of it. So that's on the live action side. And on the animation side, I would say that when animation started, you know, if you want to go as far back as like early Walt Disney movies, or even now, it's in some ways the most complicated way of telling a story because you're literally creating the universe. It's not like you can take your camera to a location and then have actors just act it out and then piece it together. In many ways, the process of making animation is one where it's like, I have a story to tell. How much of the universe do I need to create to tell the story? Let me put everything together so that the story works, and then I'll construct the universe just that's necessary for this story.
Right, right.
So you really have pre-production, post-production, and then production.
Right.
And again, this is another area that I would say in the last few years has undergone so much change, like with the advent of 3D animation, but also growth in like mixed media animation and all these sort of things. So, and the idea that we can use global talent to even produce this. So I would say animation is something that's really, really growing. And then we have games and experiences, which is like its own big like boom right now, because we as a society, games were largely considered like sports or like board games and things in the living room, but now there are these complicated things between sometimes we fill time with it with like a mobile game or something like that, versus like big budget game studio, like pay $60, $100, $200. There are like, you know, there's a huge market in just that space. Then we have entertainment experiences that the internet have opened up that is somewhere between a game and a toy, where, you know, like where do things like Second Life go? Like what even is that, right? So all of that is just on the producing. When you come to distribution, you have massive shifts going on right now from like traditional models of like film studios to movie theaters, or, you know, like network studios that are ad-based and putting things out on cable TV, to streaming and subscription models with ads, without ads. Okay. And then you have like platforms like Steam, where you can get a bunch of different games and play, game console stores. So distribution has been a booming area, if that interests you. And then finally, consumption has completely changed. Entertainment is ubiquitous to the point where I often see coworkers, I mean, I guess I work at Netflix, so that makes perfect sense, because I was going to say they just have something playing while working. And sometimes it's also YouTube and other content, to the point where I don't think we see so much separation anymore between like, this is the workplace, this isn't a place for entertainment, and this is the living room, this is where we do this. It's just everywhere. And the result of that is like how people take the content they consume to create new content that like feedback and that completionist thing, like
Mhm.
fandom is, I think if we, spoke to our grandparents, their concept of fandom and our concept of fandom are so vast
Mhm.
that it would be an absolutely alien thing. And then we have things like, fan art, fan creations, and then game modifications that then become used and become its own thing. So like the life of content doesn't end once it's consumed. It just grows and becomes its own completely different thing. And it's really whatever interests you. All of them have opportunities.
Where do you feel are the most innovative uses of interactive technology occurring now? What has you, as someone who works in this field, what's getting you excited that you see coming down the pike?
I think one of the things that, and this is going to nicely lead into why I want to teach this course in some ways, is that traditionally you had producers who sort of, and I don't mean it in this sort of like film and TV sense, I just mean producers of content conceive of an idea, whether it's an author thinking of like, wouldn't it be really cool if I wrote this story, and writes it, or whether it's like, film and TV coming together to make a piece of content and then editing it. And then you would have a different person distribute this, whether it's like in the case of books, you have your publisher, film and TV, you have your film studios with deals with theaters and your traditional networks buying content and then ads supporting, paying for it. All of that is changing to the point where we are actually flattening that distribution part, and it's becoming so much more about producers and consumers. Like content is made specifically for people. And I know this is the sort of thing where, it's on a spectrum of like, can be great, can be bad, where really you can hyper target to make something for a very specific group of people. Or you could just kind of make something and then not know who your audience is and then discover your audience, because distribution is so wide, you don't know who's going to be the consumer and then adapt to it. So this is something which opens up what interactive technology means of like, on one hand, I could have the most nuanced understanding and build something that's so specific to them, being like, these are their likes, these are their dislikes, this is what they'll want more of, this is what they'll want nothing of. Or I could put it out there and then let them use it, and that becomes the feedback, and I iterate, or the content adapts and shifts.
Well, that's interesting because that's a reverse. I mean, normally, like particularly with content creation now, there's so much market research, there's looking at algorithms, there's like so much decision making that comes certainly in film content, big budget film content, before anything is actually made. So this idea of like making something and then just seeing if it finds an audience, where do you see that happening across, like, is that something Netflix is doing? No, right? They're thinking about who their audience is and how to market it, right?
I would say, like, if we look at, especially in the pandemic, how TikTok stars have become a thing that we consume. And similarly, like generally trends around like social media and YouTube stars, Instagram celebrities, and all this sort of stuff. That is not the traditional sort of like, we know who the market is and we're going to go in with big bags of money and make content with that to take that. It's very much been a mix of like, I have growing users, right? Like some of them have just had organic growth. Some of them have like very targeted growth. I would say, a lot of these platforms have given the platform, it's arguable whether the platform gave the voice or the people carved their space in the platform and made that voice be heard. But this is where it's interesting to see, like, it's not this, the usual gatekeeping model where like you had hundreds of ideas, pitches, go to a TV network, and then they would like greenlight some because of how they think this is going to translate to, well, in the case of TV networks, it was often ad money. So they're like, if advertisers aren't going to advertise in your ad slots, I'm not going to greenlight your show. Whereas now with the subscription model, ad-free subscription model, that's not the way in which content is made. It's like, we just need diverse content so everybody has something to watch. And that's so different.
So that is interesting. I mean, but that seems to me to be sort of content that is sort of like celebrity or personality focused, right? Like I think the D'Amelios, isn't that the family that became famous, or the Amelios became famous on TikTok? Now they have a show on Netflix, right?
Yeah.
So that was a case where something became a family, or but that's sort of, do you feel that happening in other arenas beyond, or other arenas beyond like the sort of celebrity personality space, that idea of just creating content and seeing if they will come?
Absolutely. So I think there are a lot, like if you look at the sort of long tail of artists or people who put content out on all these distribution platforms like YouTube, social media, with TikTok, Instagram, and all of that included, there is a vast majority of them for whom they are supported by things like paid promotions, which in some ways is like you taking the ad money directly, or Patreon, where consumers are like, I will give you money to keep, I'll directly give you money to keep making more content, which is such a big break in the model of like, I'm waiting to be bound by big media platforms, you know, like streaming services, networks, etc., and just not just making a living, but making a very comfortable living producing content directly to consumers.
That's interesting. Because I feel like there's a different level, only certain kinds of content can be sort of created that way. If you're going to compete, most people don't have the resources or the money to create what we consider like big budget TV or film content, and just see if the world finds it, right? Absolutely. So it has to be sort of different scale, but it is creating new avenues for distribution and consumption, both.
Yeah, and I think it's a case study on its own, which we don't have to go into, but like if you were to compare the content, the low budget content that we are consuming on sites, on applications like, you know, YouTube, TikTok, etc., versus what Quibi set out to do, which is, no, we need high budget short form content. I think the story is so interesting to see what the consumers chose, where it's a misconception that it's not like it's a one or the other thing. It's not like do consumers want high budget or low budget? They want both.
Right, they just want content, whatever speaks to them as an individual.
Exactly.
Right? It's going to be different for everyone. Well, that's interesting. I mean, I do feel like Quibi was an idea that really got slammed by the pandemic, right? I mean, the conception behind Quibi is that you were waiting in the doctor's office and you'd watch a 2-minute video or 5-minute video as a part of a longer story. And then, everyone was home and wanted to, binge for hours at a time. So like, I mean, I feel like Quibi, when it was conceived, probably made a lot of sense in terms of consumption patterns, what were perceived consumption patterns.
Short form consumption is huge. And that itself is like something that everyone who does long form content has to compete with. Just because you watch movies doesn't mean you don't watch TV. Just because you watch a lot of TV shows doesn't mean you don't watch 8-minute videos on YouTube. And just because you watch 8-minute videos of YouTube doesn't mean you don't watch 1-minute, 2-minute videos. So
they all do everything now, right?
Do all of it. And that's a new world.
So you work at, obviously, arguably the dominant streamer in the industry, but certainly one of the titans. So can you talk a little bit about how that relates to what you do, like the interface design that you're doing? You're at a big institution. Did you find things about regulatory things in the same way you found in the financial sector? What were the differences? What were the surprises? And what is sort of unique about doing what you're doing for the company that you're doing it?
So one of the things that I think people often forget is that not only does Netflix distribute and stream content, we make a lot of content. And so right now, I'm actually working on the side that makes tools to help the people make content. So film and TV has had its history, and animation, because that's also where I'm working, has its processes and like what worked at that time to make content. And while it does result in making content, we need to make content. Netflix needs to make content at a scale that's unparalleled. We want to do a ton of movies, a ton of TV shows, do it globally, do it for kids and adults, do it in every single genre, do it. I'm trying to think, like there are so many dimensions to which it's
Also, Netflix has really done a lot of international partnerships and
Exactly.
developed, really as a very global business, which is also
So
interesting.
yeah, and in all of this, regulation's always there. Everything from like um, entertainment specific, like there are entertainment laws in all different countries, and that's about displaying content, but also there's regulation around how you make content. And perhaps in some cases, it's in some countries, I believe there are requirements that if you're going to show a bunch of content, some percentage of it has to be like local content. So you're not doing a sort of like a cultural colonization of sort, right? By just only showing, say, American content as such. So that's another reason to make content that's local language, local level content. But in the production of content itself, there is a lot that goes into not just on the legal side in terms of like exhibition windows, like where can you show it, when do you show it, but also in like day-to-day things of like how many people are you going to hire, and like how does that day work, and like how do you make sure that you don't just go and like take everyone that's available and then make them work super duper duper hard just so you can make content. So people are resources, but you can't abuse them.
I think that's a very good point, and something that I think the industry is also recognizing, sort of belatedly, but that's another discussion.
Yep.
So that's all very interesting. I think that we in this conversation, it's really become clear that like tech is influencing everything. You're now working on tech that's designed to help the content creators, right? You've worked on tech that is about the user interface, right? It's I'm assuming that there's also a tech influence in marketing beyond the interface. Can you
Absolutely.
talk a little bit about that, how it's influencing marketing?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm sure some people would be familiar with is that the idea that there's different artwork that you see on Netflix, and like they cycle through it, and then that videos can be different, trailers can be cut differently. It's the way in which we can produce marketing material has really, really changed. And with that, it means that like marketing also has grown to have so many opportunities to do more targeted, or perhaps just try different things. Because a lot of the time what probably went into decisions for like why we should go with this versus that is like an evaluation of like cost efficiency, target audiences, etc. But now you're in a space where you could do both probably.
Can you walk us through a little bit how you feel marketing has, like what your perception of how marketing was and how it's changed because of tech? Because just for a baseline of people who don't necessarily understand how the traditions have been upended, I think that would be helpful to have.
Absolutely. So traditionally, I would say marketing has been identify your big cohorts of people, break them down by demographics. You don't want too specific a demographic, because then if you cater to them, you might alienate the rest. And also, you're always working with a finite amount of money. So if you think about the costs of, say, things like billboards and stuff like that, you can't control whose eyes are going to see the billboard. So you take a very general approach. Let's say we have everybody who is driving through LA can see a billboard in LA. So that means LA demographics would inform the billboard. So you don't have to worry so much or you would narrow it down to like, who lives in LA? What are the people in LA like? And then do a billboard for that. Also, how you think about time that somebody sees marketing material is like, oh, well, what's the medium? How much time would they see it? How much will they comprehend? So largely it's been flattened to a few dimensions. So it might be a mischaracterization to call it a matrix, but it's something in a very finite sense. But some of the things that tech has opened the doors for is that you don't need to pick the majority and then put your money towards targeting them as a way to like get the best bang for your buck. You really can break everyone down, not everyone, but like you can break a lot of people down into a large number of smaller groups and then go after a lot of smaller groups with the same amount of money and then really get your bang for your buck without having to, spend a large amount of money on one or two things.
And I imagine that one of the advantages that tech brings is that you can pretty quickly target and change the marketing, so it does direct the group that you're trying to hit.
Also, the nature of digital means that there's no wasted resource, right? It's not the same as like, oh no, if we are going to advertise in a magazine, how are we going to get 20% of the magazines printed to have one ad, another 20% to have another ad, and then make sure the right 20% went to the right people, because that's a logistical nightmare. But the thing that networked communications, the internet, and digital imagery affords is that the piece of marketing itself is very easy to produce in multiple iterations at a huge scale, because it doesn't have the cost of like physical production.
That's interesting. So I'm very excited that you're going to be teaching a class for us this spring in real-time production. This will be the NYU LA's first class from the Shanghai Portal campus, which I'm really excited about. And so this is a class in live streaming production, right? I mean, I keep saying I don't understand half of what you do. I'm learning a lot today. I don't understand half of it, but I'm really excited about this class. And I know some of the people in our audience today are people who will be joining us next semester. So I wanted you to talk about that class a little bit, about what the aims are and how it's going to be conducted.
It's really about real-time storytelling and experiences, and whether that storytelling comes from like making short form, medium form, long form content, whether those experiences are games and toys, that's something that I'm hoping we can explore in the class with what people's interests are, because I don't want to restrict it to any one particular format, because everybody has their way of communicating. Right. It's really about investigating and doing and learning how you could do real-time storytelling, because to some degree people are familiar with it. Like, we might have seen live broadcasts, whether it's of sports or the news or live game shows. We've seen things that are live and we have a sort of understanding of it. But in the digital and networked world that we are in now, it has changed so much. I would say film and TV have gone to new areas that never thought were possible. One of the experiences, if you haven't had a chance to experience it yet, is an interactive one at Netflix called Bandersnatch, where when you think about it, when you're making decisions, everything seems so seamless. But if you look under the hood, you're actually doing on-the-fly editing. So when a user chooses something, you're now having to go between two different shots that were taken so that it really does look like the character turned around and went through the left door. So that sort of technology is mind-blowing in some ways.
Are we likely to see more out of that out of Netflix? Because I love Bandersnatch, and I used to like those, choose your own adventure books when I was a kid. I thought it was exactly the same concept. But do you think we'll see more of that? Because I know it was really hailed as a great thing, and I think it got pretty good engagement, but there hasn't really been much follow-up. Is that the cost of it, or the time that it takes to create, or what is the impediment to doing more of that?
A lot of it. There have been, I think there was a special of Kimmy Schmidt that was also interactive that came out. And there are a few more things in the works. But maybe this is something we can explore in the class and talk about, like, what goes into this? What are all the small things that feeds into why this might be hard to do or is hard to do? And in TV too, I feel like the living room is changing so much. We use our remote controls way more than just for like changing channels. So what could we do that involves, live TV that is different? And then obviously we have like everything to do with live streaming, and how live streaming is this, again, flattening between the space of someone making content and someone consuming the content. I haven't been watching the chat right now, but I'm sure there's a lot of things being said. But if I was a live streamer and I was completely ignoring the chat, I would say that the people who are my audience would be pretty mad. And I may not have that much of an audience.
Right.
So exploring some of that. And
So is most I mean there's live performance that's not interactive, right?
Mhm,
You know, that
mhm.
would be the traditional watching a live, you know, presentation, screen presentation. But there is live that is also interactive, right? There is as well.
Yeah.
So can you give us some examples of that, of where there would be interactive live streaming?
So just to set the context for like what is live streaming that doesn't interactive, it's when you've planned exactly what you're going to do, you've rehearsed it, you've got your camera set up, you've got your way of broadcasting information, and then you just play it out. It's really no different from, say, when you're an audience member in a play to some degree. They've rehearsed everything, they do it, and then there might be a little changes, little differences, different, performances from the actors given all the factors. But a lot of the time, it's not really that different than how the producers of the content conceived of it. And then there is real-time content, which is adapting to whatever the needs are. Like, for example, a lot of Twitch streamers and things like that, what they're doing is really coming up with the content as they are producing it.
As
And
you create it, yeah.
yeah, and that's just a
That's
whole
interesting.
new world. And you can see how different performers are and who is comfortable. Like, you can compare your low budget, less experienced streamers to like highly paid actors who are good at improv as well. But the way their performance and their craft reads to audiences are so different. And what they're looking for, those markers, quickly scanning text of chat, I am so impressed to see how reactive they are. And it gives this engagement that is so different when the person who you're watching the stream of calls out to you and was like, oh yeah. I've seen one where this Twitch streamer found out there was one of the viewer's birthday and that no one was home. So he went and got a cake and then asked for an address and had a cake sent to this person. And then on the stream, made sure that everybody acknowledged that. And I feel like moments like these are just beautiful and new, because in some ways we're all over the world, but space is not a thing. Time becomes the central thing. And time itself is so different. Like right now, you and I are both in LA and we're both in the same time, but when you have somebody who is 12 hours ahead or behind of you and engaging with your content from a completely different space and time, how does that affect you as a performer, an artist, and the kind of content you're creating?
Well, that's interesting. I think it's like we're all flung apart, and yet we're all desiring to connect. I think we felt that more than ever during lockdown, right? Like how we could be so, I mean, it's great that we connect like this way, you know, through Zoom. It's a brilliant piece of technology that allows us to gather when we might not been able to, but I think it's really emblematic of, it's a very basic human need, right? It's like, we want to connect, and I think we want to connect over stories, because that's how we make, meaning of our lives, is by telling us the story. So when you got drawn to entertainment, and you say you've always wanted this, did you have a creative path or aspiration, or did you always think, I'm going to be entertainment?
No, what's funny is that when I was at the University of Melbourne doing my media and communication arts degree, I did go to night school for film. And I realized it's not for me. It's a different world completely. Producing content, I love both consuming and assisting in the production, but the actual production of content,
not for you.
Not for me. I've done a few improv classes. I'm better off sitting and sketching. I'm more of a pen and paper kind of person.
Even though you're a tech person, you describe yourself as a pen and paper person.
I'm a pen and paper person.
That makes me happy, because I'm a pen and paper person. So this may be completely off your field, but I just wondered if you had any sort of opinions, being in the tech space, about NFTs and how they're impacting the entertainment space.
Yeah, I mean, once again, way out left field and came out of nowhere, and now is so ubiquitous, and goes to show you how much tech and our day-to-day life is really hard to say, these things are happening in parallel. It's just all interwoven.
Mhm.
And I think in some ways, NFTs bring back that age-old conversation of what does it mean to own art,
Mhm.
right? I know that like plenty of people have written about this, and like different times mean different things to own art. And now here we have this world where you're owning art without art being a thing in itself, right? Like, what does it mean to own a signifier of art? And
Mhm.
how does a signifier of art have arguably more value than the physical thing itself?
See,
That was,
as a paper and pen person, I don't know that I'm ever going to get there to say that the representation has the value. I just don't know. To me, the tangible seems, that's why I'm sort of fascinated. Well, both by NFTs and also by cryptocurrency, right? It seems all very ethereal and sort of made up, right? As opposed to tangible and
I
real.
think in some ways you can look at how does anyone say they own the art when they didn't make it and it's not the thing itself, right? Like, what does it mean to own Duchamp's, fountain? What does that mean? It's an understanding of it, right? So a lot of the time, owning art itself can arguably be said we're owning an idea that society accepts this in art, and me having this piece shows that I can have it, I get it, like all of these are ideas and concepts.
Right.
So in that way,
Well, signifier of status,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Signifier. Yeah.
This is now back to digital signifiers. I
Mhm.
think there are people out there who are malicious and are taking advantage of people because there are definitely ways in which you might be the content producer and yet mistakenly have made it such that somebody else can own an NFT of your art. And then it's like there are a lot of gray areas where it does in some way warrant you understand what the realms of it are. And yeah, it changes a lot of things.
It's interesting. I mean, I'm perpetually fascinated by the advances and changes to society that are happening via tech. Even if I don't understand all of them, I can't wrap my head around. But it's always very interesting. I mean, I think and I'm a little older than you, but in my lifetime, I've just seen so much change, and in everything from production to distribution to consumption.
Yeah.
And
And
I feel like, well, and also, there's been a lot of talk about this, that human evolution was kind of like this kind of line, and then tech evolution was like that. Right?
yeah.
So I think in many ways, we as a species are still trying to catch up with the tech evolution, right? Yes, I have a question from the audience. Can I restate the name of the class Archana will be teaching? It is called RealTime. And we'll meet on a Tuesday, Thursday meeting pattern here at NYU LA, where we hope some of you are coming. Can't wait to have you. So Archana, I just want to ask you, we were kind of running out of time, and I wanted to ask you, what would be, well, I always like to ask this both ways. Like, what was the best piece of advice that you got that helped you along in your career? And also, what was the worst piece of advice that either you should have ignored or did ignore?
I mean, I don't want to come up with any funny answers about this because, sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I can be all clever. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'll be real about it. I think the best advice I ever got was from my mom around the time when I was like, there was not just the university degree stuff, then switching careers and things like that, but so much other stuff happening in my life. But sometimes we tell ourselves it's bad to quit, that this concept of like, you're a quitter, I think we should step aside from that, because one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was that like, there's no harm in just saying this isn't working for me, and to find something that is, as opposed to like staying and suffering and being unhappy. So like, quit.
It can be very empowering. I always believe in it. When I talk to students, I always say, bet on yourself, follow your instincts, and bet on yourself. Yeah.
And the worst piece of advice that I suppose I've ever got is, you're not good at it, so why would you try?
Oh, terrible. That's so mean.
Yeah, I know, I'm paraphrasing because I was like, I'm not going to go through the entire conversation, but roughly like, like, why try something that you're not good at? Because sometimes, circumstances change, and that thing that you've been bad at, that you thought was because of you, ends up was not because of you. It was like things around, and then you try it again after a long time, and you're like, oh, what? I'm not bad at this.
I think that's really excellent advice, although I'm not going to apply it to bowling. I've accepted that I'm bad at bowling, and I'm just going to accept that. But I think that's
tried getting custom balls made.
all right. No, I haven't.
I'm
But
just saying,
that's the advice, and I will take that.
Say that a lot of bowling alley balls are not really made for, you know, your hand. So maybe if you really want to do this,
I see
you
Archana
can do
to
it.
solve all my world problems. Like I'm already thinking about how to order a custom bowling ball. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Because if we don't, I've run out of questions. I want to thank you again, Archana, so much for being so generous with your time. I'm so excited to welcome you to the NYU at Los Angeles faculty and our program and part of our community. You're of course already a part of the NYU community, but we are building something I think pretty special here in LA, and it's because of people like you becoming a part of it. So I'm very grateful to have you joining us this spring, and I hope everyone who tuned in enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I still don't understand about 3/4 of what Archana does, but that's better than when we began.
Now.
We're getting some thanks from the audience, so I relay those to you, Archana, and I will thank you again, everyone, for attending. Please keep your eyes open and your ears peeled for more NYU LA events, and we look forward to having you join us.
Thank you so much, Nina. This has been awesome.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.